Okay, so we're going to talk now about the Montgomery bus boycott. Last time, on our lecture, we were talking about the murder of Emmett Till and how his murder really kind of, sprung into action this civil rights movement. People connected with what happened to him. They identified with him. They identified with his mother, and the Montgomery bus boycott is going to take place on December 5th, 1955. But before we get into all the details, I want to go ahead and play a short video for you about Rosa Parks and her involvement with the boycott itself. So let's see here. Here we go. Watch this. Take notes.
December 1st, 1955. On that day, Rosa Parks boarded a bus and took a seat. A few stops later, she was told to give her seat to a white passenger who had just boarded. She refused. For those who insist that a moment be pinpointed when the American Revolution of '63 began, that moment will serve.
When Rosa Parks decided to stay seated in December of 1955, I was 2.5 years old. I know that what Rosa Parks did made a huge difference in my life. The conventional wisdom about her was, this was just a woman who got on the bus, she was tired, her feet hurt, she didn't want to get up. But that does not take into account her incredibly amazing political consciousness.
She was part of a community of women activists at local colleges who were organizing to take on segregated buses.
Rosa Parks sat down on the bus and began what we know today as American Civil Rights Movement.
Rosa Parks actually galvanized a people for change.
Rosa Parks had the discipline and the consciousness and the awareness to be able to be the person to represent African Americans who were trying to make a difference.
And when Rosa Parks makes her stand, she became an icon for change.
That's something that started with the spark from this woman that grew into a local bus boycott, that grew into a national consciousness. It made most Americans who care about liberty and justice realize that this way of life had to end.
Right, okay, so, I wanted you all to see that so you can kind of get a sense of just how pivotal a moment this truly was. A few months after the murder of Emmett Till, the bus boycott takes place, and it is a very well organized event. It didn't just happen, out of the blue. Rosa Parks was a seamstress, and you know the story, right? She was writing on, in 1955 there was still segregation laws as far as the buses were concerned. Like if one part of the bus was filled up, and African Americans were expected to give up their seat if white folks, they walked on the bus, and so what happened with her is, she and three others, I believe, are told to move by the bus driver, and she refuses. She doesn't do it. So this is what gets her into trouble. She gets arrested and fined $10 and $4 for fees. So, but the thing about it is that, they make her seem like she's just a little old lady that is, tired and her feet hurt. But in reality, Rosa Parks was 40. She was married. She was a churchgoer. She was employed. And she was also, not scandalous at all. She was a perfect person to build a boycott around. And so it was well organized by the NAACP. She was, not by the NAACP, but she was actually the secretary. Her and her husband were active members of the NAACP chapter in their hometown. And, she was a perfect person that they could rally a movement behind. And so they did on December 5th. 1955, Black folks are going to boycott the bus. Now, this is an important thing because, riding the bus was absolutely necessary for African Americans in Montgomery, Alabama, because of segregation. It meant that they didn't live in the neighborhoods where they worked. They had to take the bus every day to get there, and this was an everyday indignity for them. The racial segregation was there. They decided to boycott. She's the face to do it, and they let everybody know that this boycott is going to take place, and are told to spread the word, but do it in secret, and it works. The next day, people don't take the bus, and this hurt. The bus line, because they really did depend on African Americans for as their clientels. And that's the thing about it that I think African Americans found out, was that they were, they had a power. They might not have as loud a political voice yet, because they're being stifled by segregation, by subjugation. They're not able to vote. They're not protected under the law like the way that white Americans are. But they find that they do have a power in their purchasing power. And so they built this boycott. It lasts an entire year. The city really doesn't want to go back, doesn't want to meet the demands of the protests. And by the way, the boycott, they weren't after desegregating the buses, but it just so happened that that's the direction that it went in. And after a year, they finally do. They give them what they want, right? They desegregate the buses, and one of the other big consequences of this too is that, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference gets involved here, and it's really made up of ministers and other leaders that get together to organize this boycott, and many others to come. But it catapults Martin Luther King as really kind of like a wonderful speaker, very, very talented organizer. And, the bus boycott, not only is it successful, it gets them to desegregate the buses in Alabama, but then also it catapults Martin Luther King into the spotlight, moving forward. So he will, and some, depending on which groups we're talking about here, because some will be more radical than others, but he will be almost like the face of the civil rights movement. And at the very, very least, he will be the voice of it, right? They will use Gandhi's tactics of nonviolent protest, which will also be duplicated by the Chicano movement and the boycott that Cesar Chavez will be involved in a little bit later on. So, nevertheless, bus boycott puts pressure on the city to desegregate the buses. They rally the African American community. They use their power. They use their voice, even though it might not be a political voice. They use their power financially, right? And they're able to win. It takes a while, but they finally get it. They're successful after some time. Okay, so Rosa Parks, not the little old lady that people make her out to be. She was active politically. She was very well aware of her political consciousness, like the video said. And this is only the beginning of the civil rights movement. It's successful. It takes a while, but that's the thing that they find out, is that they gotta work on it. They gotta organize. They gotta come together, and they have to use that power, that voice, however limited, however small it might feel. When they come together, that's when something magical truly begins to happen, and people realize that. It's like, hey, wait a minute. You know what? We do have power. We do have. We can take back control, and we can change our circumstances. And that's the thing, that they pretty much realize that when they come together as a community, that's when change really begins to happen. Okay, so we're going to end it there for this. I'm going to cut to the next segment, which is going to be on the Little Rock Nine. And I'll see you guys in just a minute.